So, after the technically failed Alaska summit between the U.S. and Russia, Zelensky is coming to the U.S. to meet President Trump. And honestly, I can already see how this is going to go. Zelensky's probably not going to get much out of this, and instead, Trump's likely going to say stuff like this is Biden's war, Russia is a powerful country, and that Ukraine needs to sign something to end the war. Let's break it down simply, though. What could actually happen on Monday? I'm curious to see, and I'm sure you all are too. So let's dive into this. All right, as you probably know, the recent U.S.-Russia summit, where President Trump tried to flex America's military power, kind of failed on a technical level. The main goal of the summit, getting a peace deal or at least a ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine, didn't happen. Now, after that Alaska summit, there's been a ton of reports saying that Zelensky rejected the offer letter that Putin supposedly sent to President Trump to deliver. What exactly was in that offer? Well, we don't know for sure, because none of the details have been officially released. But there are plenty of media outlets talking about the demands Putin made to Trump to help end the war. Now, just to be clear, this is all based on media reports. The U.S. government hasn't released any official documents or papers on this. So, I'm just trying to give you guys the information and insights that are floating around in the news. All right, so if you look at the map of Ukraine here, you'll see these red areas. These are the regions currently under Russian control. Russia's army has already taken over this land. But out of all these regions, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson, the most important one is Donetsk. If you take a closer look, you'll see that Russia has control over about 75% of Donetsk, but the remaining 25% is still not under Russian control. So what did Putin offer? He said that the entire Luhansk region, which is already fully under Russian control, should just be recognized as part of Russia. And then, for Donetsk, he wants the remaining part to fall under Russian control as well. So, the entire Donetsk and Luhansk areas will be part of Russia, according to his offer. Now, you might be wondering, why is Donetsk so important? Let me explain. As I said, 75% of Donetsk is already controlled by Russia. If Russia takes over the rest, they'll have effectively achieved their goal for starting this war, to capture both Donetsk and Luhansk. But there's more to it than just land. Donetsk is part of the Donbass Industrial Belt, or, as some call it, the Fortress Belt. This region is super important to Ukraine's economy. Over the past 11 years, Ukraine has invested a lot of time, money, and effort into building up this area, strengthening defenses, and creating industrial and military infrastructure around these cities. Losing Donetsk would be a huge blow to Ukraine's economy, making it that much harder for them to rebuild. That's why Ukraine doesn't want to give it up, while Putin is trying to take it. He also said that Russia would stop advancing any further. In other words, whatever land they've already captured, like Kherson and Zaporizhia, would stay under Russian control, but they wouldn't push any farther if Zelensky agrees to let Donetsk fall under Russia. This right here is the main offer, so it's important to get this. But there's more. Putin also demanded a written commitment from both President Trump and Zelensky that whatever's left of Ukraine after a potential settlement will remain neutral. What does that mean? No NATO membership, ever. To be honest, that's a pretty wild demand from Putin. On one hand, he's asking for a huge chunk of Ukraine's land, and on the other, he wants Ukraine to give a formal promise that they'll never join NATO. And if that wasn't enough, there are some extra demands too, like the formal recognition of Russia's control over Crimea, which for Ukraine is a non-negotiable point, especially after the 2014 annexation. So yeah, this is the offer Putin made to Trump, and Trump then passed it on to Zelensky, hoping that this could somehow lead to a peace deal. So what was Zelensky's response to all this? Obviously, he flat out refused. He said he couldn't give up the Donetsk region, or any other region for that matter, under any circumstances. He made it clear that Ukraine wouldn't make any territorial concessions. To do so would be unconstitutional in Ukraine. He also emphasized that they wouldn't be pressured into giving up any land. Sovereignty is key, and Ukraine needs security guarantees to make sure Russia doesn't attack again. Also, Ukraine's constitution has Article 73, which says that any Ukrainian territory can only be given away through a referendum. The people living in that region would need to vote on it. But let's be real. Do you think any country would accept that? Of course not. So, Zelensky's saying this whole idea is unconstitutional. A lot of European leaders are backing Ukraine's sovereignty too. They believe any deal with Russia should include security guarantees, kind of like NATO's Article 5, where if one NATO country is attacked, it's an attack on all NATO members. Because Putin hasn't said anywhere that Russia would give a written guarantee to Ukraine that they wouldn't cross borders again, even if some kind of agreement is made. That's a major red flag. So, Europe's pretty divided on this. On one side, you've got President Trump and the U.S. pushing for this deal. On the other, Europe's saying this is just wrong. Now tomorrow, there's going to be that meeting between Zelensky and Trump. Let's see if anything changes, but honestly, I'd say there's almost zero chance Zelensky will agree to any of Putin's demands. I think Trump will end up saying, "We talked about a lot, but it's up to Ukraine whether they want peace or not." We'll have to wait and see what happens, but I really hope this meeting doesn't end up like the last time President Trump and Zelensky met at the White House. That didn't go too well. So what do you think? Do you think Ukraine can end this war without losing any more land? Or do you think a peace deal is coming soon? Thanks for watching, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.